Hello and welcome. Hi, I'm Dave, and this tutorial is part of a Learn React tutorial series. I'll give a link to the full playlist in the description below, just in case you want to start at the beginning. Today we're going to refactor the React.js blog application that we've already created in this series. And this refactor will remove the state management from the context API that we did in the last tutorial, and it will move it to Easy Peasy, which is a package that we can install that is built on top of Redux. It makes using Redux easy peasy. And so that's a great introduction to using Redux. And I would actually say using a package like Easy Peasy or some of the alternatives that they list here on the site, instead of using Redux directly, is really a great choice until you have to use Redux directly for possibly an enterprise size application. So small to medium applications can certainly use one of these other choices, and they list several alternatives here as well as Easy Peasy. And you can see one of the alternatives they list is the context API with hooks in React, and that's what we did in the previous tutorial. So if you haven't checked that out, again, refer to that playlist link in the description. Now let's go ahead and get started with Easy Peasy. Okay, I've got our blog application open in Visual Studio Code, and you can see I've already opened up the package.json file here. A couple of things to note. One, we're going to install Easy Peasy, but the other is we didn't really ever clean this up since we launched it with Create React App in the first place. And these first three packages we're not using, they're testing libraries, and we're also not using Web Vitals. So we can clean that up just a little bit with an npm uninstall command, and then we can just paste in the title of each one of these, and we can remove those from our project if you want to. So this is just a quick cleanup step here, and I'll paste all of these in with a space in between each one, and we can remove all of them from our project altogether. So the last one being Web Vitals. Do that, and I'm going to press enter. This will quickly uninstall those packages, and then we'll install Easy Peasy. All right, the uninstall completed, and you can see our list of dependencies is now down to what we're actually using in our project. So let's go ahead and add Easy Peasy by typing npm I and then easy-peasy and press enter. Now that that has completed, we can see Easy Peasy is now listed in our package.json under the dependencies. I'm going to go ahead and start JSON-Server here by typing npx JSON-Server-P 3500 for the port -w and data/db.json where to look for the data, and I'll press enter. And this is from a project we had previously worked on in the previous tutorials. And so if you didn't already have that installed, you want to go back in the tutorial list as well. Now, with that launching, actually, not just installing, we're going to go ahead and launch the React app by typing npm start in a separate terminal window. And now when this all gets started, we'll be ready to start making the changes to our blog application. And now the blog application has launched, and really we won't change the functionality today. We're just going to refactor to use a different state management approach. So I will minimize Chrome for now, and we can come back and check the functionality after some changes. I'm going to close the terminal windows, although everything will continue to run. And we need to go ahead and highlight the source folder. And inside the source folder, in the same level as our index.js, we're going to create another file, and we're just going to call this file store.js. We'll start with an import statement. There we need to import create store. We also need action, func, which will support asynchronous actions, and computed, which will be computed values of state. Okay, and that's all from Easy Peasy, as you see there. We'll also need to import the API because our actions will contain API actions. As you'll see, we'll pull some of the logic actually back into our Easy Peasy store. And now we'll have export default create store, parentheses, and curly braces. And this is where we'll keep all of our state and actions. I'll start the first one here with posts, and as you might expect, the default state will be the empty array. much like we would do in use state. And then we'll have set posts, and here we'll have an action which receives state and a payload, not play, but payload. There we go. And we'll have an arrow function here, and this will be state.posts equals the payload that is passed in. And I'll save this. Now after this change, I'm going to copy and paste in all of the other state because it's very repetitious and it is the same pieces of state we've used in this blog application for a while. I'll just pull that over. We need a comma after and paste it all in. And here you can see we also have post title, set post title, post body, set post body, edit title, set edit title, edit body, set edit body, search, set search, and search results. And that is some state that we were keeping in components again that we're pulling back to our easy peasy state store. And that is because we're going to have actions as well. And now the first thing we will define here will still be state. And this is a post count, which we haven't had before, but easy peasy lets us have computed values. And I want to show how that works. So we'll pass in state and we'll put an arrow here, and then we'll have state.posts.length. And as you might guess, this will tell us how many posts we have. Now we can also have a get post by ID state. Even though you might think this would be an action, it's actually considered state. And that is because it won't actually send us the value. It's going to send us a function that we define here, an anonymous function that is returned. We have the arrow, and now we'll have state.posts.find, and then we'll take each post, and then we can say post.id toString, like we had previously done in our application, strict equals the ID. Now this will also be considered state because it's returning the anonymous function, and that anonymous function will then take the ID to return the specific post that we want. Now I'm going to scroll up to get a little bit of room here, and then we'll create our thunk actions, which are asynchronous actions. And the first one will be save post, and it will start out with thunk, and then we have async, and then we pass actions, and then whatever the payload is, and so we can name it separately, but in the documentation you'll see payload. Here this will be new post as we are saving a new post, and then we'll also have helpers. And now we have an arrow function after that, and the helpers, you'll notice we can deconstruct posts from the current state to use inside this thunk action, and this is from helpers.getState. And that is what makes that useful. Oh, we need an equal sign there. That didn't look right. There we go. Helpers.getState. And now we have our posts. Now the rest will be the try catch block that we had previously had in the NewPost.js file. So let's go there quickly, and let's just go to our handle submit function in the NewPost.js file, copy the try catch block. We're not going to remove it. We'll leave this as it is and come back to this file. But now we can paste it right in here and just make a few changes. Our response line will be the same, that we'll use the API and we'll post the new post that is passed in. Now, we don't really need to define this all posts variable here. We can just take this array that we are creating, I'll cut this, and replace all posts as we set the posts. But now we can't just refer to set posts like this. It actually needs to be actions.setPost, and then it pulls it from above where we have our state here and our actions, and there is set post. And so as you might guess, the following two, both post title and post body, need the same. So we'll put actions dot in front of those. We need to remove the history push. Remember, that is a use history hook that comes from React Router, and we cannot call hooks inside of our store. So that will need to be back in the component after this function save post is called, or this thunk action, if you will. And that essentially completes this thunk action, so we can save. And now we're ready to put the next, and the next one will be delete post, and it will start much the same. So I'll copy this much, paste it here, but we can go ahead and change the new post payload. It's going to be an ID. And then of course we need to put the closing curly brace and parentheses as well. I'm going to scroll up so we can see this a little better, and then we need to go to the post page that has our handle delete function, and we can copy and paste the entire try catch block now as we go back to the store, and right underneath where we define post we'll put the try catch. We have the API, we're passing in an ID that is received here. Once again, we don't really need to define post lists like this. We can just take the post.filter that we've defined there, cut that, replace post lists, remove that from the code, and we need to remove the history once again and leave that inside the component. And we can save, and now we've completed our delete post thunk action. And before we're finished, we need to create the edit post thunk action. And so we will once again start off like this. So we'll copy and paste the thunk. We'll have actions. Now this will not be an ID. Our payload we'll call updated post because it's a post we've edited and updated. We once again need to have our closing curly brace and parentheses here. So let's now go to EditPost.js and let's find our handle edit function. Here it is. We will once again copy the try catch blocks and we'll go back to the store to paste those in. I'm going to scroll up just a little bit so we can see this better. And now we have our updated post being passed in, and it is right here. We're also referencing an ID, which we don't have, but we can get from the updated post. And we could say updated post.id, or we could deconstruct from updated post, and that's what I'll do here. So updated post delivers the ID through deconstruction, and then we can continue to reference it like we have in our code. Now, the other thing we need to do is once again add actions.setPosts. Let's copy this down. Actions.setEditTitle and setEditBody. Remove the history. And we should now have completed our edit post thunk action. And now that we've completed the store that we're going to use for Easy Peasy, we can go ahead and apply this to our application and remove the context API and the use context hooks. I do want to mention that while we're only using one store, you can get more complex with Easy Peasy and create individual models and pull those into a store as well. And you can look at the documentation if you want to make a more complex application with Easy Peasy. Let's start adding this to our application by going directly to the index.js. And now we need to import at the top. So we'll type import, and here we're going to import the store provider from Easy Peasy. And then we'll have another import because we need to import the store we just created from /store. And now that we have both of those, right underneath the React strict mode, we want to add the store provider, and the store is going to be equal to store. And then of course it automatically adds the closing one here in Visual Studio Code, which we will put underneath the closing router, and we can tab in the router. And now the store will provide all of our state that we have in the store, or the store provider will provide the store state for our entire application. So we can save the index.js file, and we're ready to move on to the app.js. We don't have too many changes to make to the app component. We do need to remove the data provider context, and we need to remember to remove it down here as well. So that data provider that's after the header, and then of course it's before the footer, the closing one. We'll get rid of those, and now we need to go to our context and actually move a couple of things back into the app component, because we cannot put the hook for our use Axios fetch into our data store with the Easy Peasy. So what we need to do is put our request for initial data back in the app component. And we were doing that with our use Axios fetch hook and the use effect hook to set the posts. And so then what that means, we also need to import useEffect and import the useAxios fetch hook. I'm going to copy this part right here, and we'll just type in the rest manually for the imports. So we copy these, we can scroll back up to where we were, and we'll go to app.js, and now inside the app, we're going to have our useAxios fetch and useEffect, and that means we need to import those. So let's go ahead and type import useEffect, and this is from React, and then we also need to import useAxios fetch, and you can see Visual Studio Code completed that for me. It's in the hooks folder. And after that, we have one other import we need to do, and this is from our Easy Peasy instance. So we've got use store actions, because we need to pull in set posts, and so it's from Easy Peasy. I said instance, it's from our Easy Peasy store, and that's what we need to pull in is set posts. So we're not quite finished. We need to say const set posts and set this equal to use store actions, and then it accepts the actions, an arrow function, and then we say actions.setPosts. And now we have imported in set posts from our Easy Peasy store, and we've got our useAxios fetch custom hook, and notice we're not using fetch error or is loading yet. I don't want to send those back to the store. Oh, we need to put set posts in here as a dependency as well. Okay, I don't want to set fetch error or is loading, those statuses, back to the store. Those can just be passed down, and that is something you can do. You can still drill props even though you are using a state management library or solution, I should say. Well, here we go. Or package might be the correct word. I definitely typed something I didn't mean to there. Now we've got our route, and here is our home component, and we're going to pass is loading, set it equal to is loading, and we're also going to pass the fetch error, set that equal to fetch error. Everything else we'll keep in our state management, but these, well, I shouldn't say everything, because once we get to a list and we create list items, we'll go ahead and drill those props too. So occasionally the choice might lend itself towards drilling props instead of state management, and you can mix those if you want to. Looking at the application here, we can see the next component that will use any information or data will be the nav component. The header isn't really using any. So let's go directly to the nav.js file, and we can see here we're importing use context and data context, and we shouldn't need either of those now. We will want to import useEffect from React, and then we'll also need to import use store state and use store actions from Easy Peasy. And now that we have attempted or completed that, I believe we've done both, we now need to go ahead and pull in some state from Easy Peasy. So let's look at how to do that. We were previously pulling in search and set search from the context, but we'll need just a little more than that now. So we're going to define posts, and we'll set this equal to use store state, which receives the state, and then an arrow, and then it is state.posts. And we need a little more state, so I'm just going to copy this line down, and instead of posts, this is going to be the search that was previously received, and we can just change post, select the entire post, there we go, to search here as well. Now I'll copy this down again, but we need to change just a little more here. This is going to be an action that is set search, and so instead of use store state, this is use store actions, and then we need to pass in actions, so I'll just change both of those, and instead of search, this is set search. Now we have one more action yet we need in this component, and this action is set search results. So I'm going to select both of these, just go to the end and add results on to the end. Now we have all of the state and actions that we should need pulled in from Easy Peasy, but we're not using them all yet, and we're not using useEffect. Now in our store, you might notice we don't have any hooks here in our actions. We cannot use hooks in this store, but we were in the context. So now if I go back to the nav, we're going to need to pull our useEffect hook in here that was in our data context. So let's look at the data context, and here is the useEffect hook that was helping filter and set our search results. So we can copy this, go back to the nav.js, and underneath the state, we can paste in the useEffect. And now here, React is going to complain if we don't also put set search results in here as a dependency. So let's do that as well for the useEffect. And now everything is being used that we've imported, and I believe we are finished with this component. We can see we're using posts here, we're using search here as well, and we have set search results, and below we're using search as the value, and we're setting the search here with this controlled form. So that is the end of the updates to the nav.js, and we can move on to the home.js component. Very few changes to make in the home component. We can remove the use context and data context imports. We do need to import use store state from Easy Peasy. So we'll go ahead and do that. Easy-peasy, there we go. And now we are sending some props down. We are sending is loading and fetch error. And then we're going to pull in the search results from our data store. So we'll just change this use context right here to use store state. There we go. That accepts the state, has an arrow, and then it is state dot search results. And we can save that, and I believe we are complete with the home component. Now I'm going to copy this import line because I know I'll need it on the post page, and we'll head to the post page component. The post page component, I'm going to paste the import right over the data context, and I know we also need to use store actions. It looks like we can change out the use context because we won't need that, and we should no longer need the API as that's now in a thunk action. So now we've really pared down the imports at the top, and let's go ahead and set the state here as well. The posts and set posts from use context can be eliminated, and now we'll go ahead and set our state underneath. We'll change how we get the individual post as well. So right now, let's define const delete post, and let's set that equal to use store actions that receives the actions, an arrow function, and then actions dot delete post. And after that, we're going to use state, and this will be get post by ID. If you remember that computed state, it actually delivers to us an anonymous function that receives the ID, and that is held with the state. So we use store state, pass the state, an arrow here, and then we say state get post by ID. And now that we have completed both of those, we can change how we get the individual post because we already have that logic inside of our Easy Peasy state. So now we just say get post by ID, and we pass in the ID that we are getting from the params above. And now in our handle delete function, we took the entire try catch block and moved it, so we can eliminate all of that, but we need to remember to keep our history here at the very end. So we can handle delete, and when that is complete, we will then, of course, redirect the user to the correct component or page. But before that, we need to just call delete post and pass in the ID that is passed to handle delete. And now we can go ahead and save, and we should have completed this. Before we go back to Chrome and test our delete function, let's go ahead and update the NewPost page or NewPost component as well. So we'll once again copy these imports, and let's go to newpost.js. We'll scroll to the top here. Once again, replace the data context import with the imports from Easy Peasy. We should no longer need the API import. We should no longer need the use state or use context imports. So let's delete that line. We'll remove the empty line. And now let's look at the state that should be inside the NewPost component. We previously had post title, post body, and posts all in the component, some coming from the context as the posts, and then the post title and post body were contained inside the component. But we can change that now as it all comes from Easy Peasy. And first we'll define posts, and we'll set that equal to use store state, which will have the state. And you should be seeing the pattern by now, state.posts. From there, let's just copy this down so we can use more state and easily replace the word posts. And now this will be post title. And the next one, select both again, will be post body. And there are the pieces of state. Now let's get some actions, and we need our save post thunk action, and that is use store actions, which receives the actions, and then an error. Then we have actions dot save post. I'm once again going to copy this down, and here we'll change save post to set post title. Oh, we need to change that title back to a capital T. There we go. Set title. And we'll change the second set of save post to set post body. There we go. And now we have our store actions as well that are needed. It is once again time to look at the handle submit function and see what we have eliminated. We moved our entire try catch block, so we can remove all of that. We'll once again have the history.push to redirect the user, as that could not be inside of our state with Easy Peasy. No hooks allowed there. But now we can just call save post and pass in the new post. And once we save that, our component NewPost should be complete. So let's go back to our application. Looks like it's still working. I'll reload to make sure everything's loaded. Let's go to an individual post to see the post page. That looks like it's working. Let's go to a new post page and create a fifth post. And we'll just say checking 1, 2. We have our fifth post. If we go back, we can delete the post. Now we're ready to minimize Chrome and go back and work on the edit post component. So we'll scroll up until we see it in the tree and select edit post. Scroll up to the top of edit post as well. I forgot to copy over the import statement so I don't have to type it, but here it is in the post page component. Just copy this from Easy Peasy once again. Need to go back to edit post. I'm going to just paste right over the data context import again. There we have our use store state and use store actions. It looks like we'll be able to eliminate the use state, and well, we still need the statement though, because we need this use effect that is inside of our edit post component. So we'll remove use state, and we should be able to remove use context. And then we can remove the API import as well. And our imports should now be complete. Let's look at the state that we now need inside the edit post component. And I'm going to put the ID and history at the top. And now we can look at this, and we need edit title, edit body, posts, plus the associated actions. We're also going to be able to need to get the post by ID once again. So what we can do here to make it a little bit shorter is go to the new post and copy everything we had right here for the state and actions. Now come back to edit post. We know we need the posts, edit title, and edit body. So if we paste all of that in, we have the post instead of post title. Let's just change this to edit title, and instead of post body, we'll do the same. Edit body. And now we won't need the save post action, so we'll change that in just a moment. That will need to be edit post, I guess, so we could change it now. Make that edit. And then we're going to need set edit title and set edit body. So let's select the post. Actually, let's just select the word post and change that to edit. That looks great. And now that we have the edit post action, we can use it below, but we also need to be able to get the post by ID again. And really, as I think about it, I don't think we'll need the posts on this page at all because we will be getting the post by ID. So let's eliminate that posts from the state above here that I had. And now let's go to the post page and just copy what we already had because it's the same code here. We get the post by ID from the state, we get that anonymous function, and then we get the ID from it. So back in edit post, we'll highlight where we were defining the post here and paste in get post by ID and then post, just like we had on the post page component. Now we should be able to scroll down and look at our handle edit function as well. Once again, we removed the try catch block. So we can do the same here, and then we can still use history.push. But now, instead of just pushing back where we were, which was the home page, let's push back to the ID page so we look at the individual post to see if we like the changes of that post. And if not, we could just hit the edit button again. So we'll change that history push just a little. And now here we need to call the edit post action. It's the thunk async action from Easy Peasy. And this will be updated post. And if we save that, our application should now be working with Easy Peasy like we expect it to. So let's go back and see if I have any errors. Everything seems to be working. I'm going to do a complete refresh and reload. Okay, if we go to testing post, can we edit the post? It sure looks like it. Let's put a couple of exclamation marks there and save. That looks good. Let's go ahead and open up the dev tools just to see if we're getting any warnings or if we've overlooked anything. Form submission canceled because the form is not connected. We may have to look into that, but let's see if everything else is working as we expect. We'll go to the post here. We'll say 5th post, testing 1, 2. We've made our 5th post. Let's clear this out again. And now let's go back and see if we edit and still get that form warning. Yes, we're still getting the form submission canceled warning. I think I know how we can fix that. Let's go back quickly and scroll down inside of our edit post form. And where we have button type submit, let's change that to edit type button. And if we save this, and now we go back to Chrome, let's clear out the console. Let's do a fresh reload. Okay, we had changed that post. All right, here we are, 5th post, edit post, testing 1, 2, 3. And we submit, the post is edited, we're back to the page, no more warning. So that is great, and we're back to the home. Let's go back here again, delete. Everything is working in the application like we expect it to. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and the only cleanup that we really haven't accomplished yet is to go to our data context and simply delete the file. We're no longer using it, and so we can also select the context folder and delete that. If you want to organize your project a little more, you could create a separate folder for your store and models. Of course, you would just have to import to those correctly. You could also create a components folder, much like we did for the API and hooks. I'd recommend that you do not put the index.js or the index.css in there, but all of the other components could be in a components folder, and you will often see that in a project. And then of course you would just need to route to those imports correctly as well. With that finished, I was just thinking about the handle functions that we had created, the handle submit, handle delete, handle edit. And while it doesn't really make an impact on how it works, we don't need to have the async keyword with those functions anymore. So in the post page with handle delete, I'm removing the async keyword because remember, the thunk in our easy peasy store has the async. So we don't need it here for the delete post. Likewise, in the new post component, we also don't need async for the handle submit. It again is handled by the save post thunk in our easy peasy store. And finally, in the edit post component, I'll need to scroll up here, it looks like, in the handle edit function, I no longer need the async keyword here either because the thunk in our store for easy peasy has the edit post async handled there. So we can save that. And with those changes, all we're left with is one final change I would like to make to the footer. We have been displaying the copyright and the year, which is fine, but we can do just a little something different. And this change will allow us to use our last piece of state. Oh, I collapsed that by mistake. There we go. We need to go ahead and import at the top, and this will be use store state. And we don't need an action, just the state, and this will be from easy peasy. And now that we have that, I'm going to remove the today variable that we defined with the date, and instead I'm going to define post count. And if you remember, we have that computed value in our store for easy peasy. So we can say use store state, and once again, have the state here with an arrow, and then we just say state post count. And we're pulling that now from our store. I guess we don't even need that blank line that I just inserted. And now instead of the copyright, let's put in the total post count for our blog. And so we still have the paragraph, and then in the JSX we'll use curly braces and say post count, and then we can say blog posts and save. And now we should be able to go back to our blog in Chrome and see the changes. So let's go back. And there we go. We have got 4 blog posts. If I make another one, of course I'm referring to the footer, I can just say 5th post again and say, hey, make a 5th post. And now it says we have 5 blog posts down here. So that also works as expected. And that is managing state with easy peasy. And I really recommend you check it out. It is a great package that makes using Redux so much easier, and it really cleans up your application and puts the actions and async actions and even computed values of state in your application in a very easy to manage way. Hey, thank you guys so much for liking the video if it helped you get started with React. Also, I appreciate you watching and subscribing. It's helping my channel grow. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon.